You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Especially for Black people nowadays, being able to find a vulnerable space to be authentic, to jump on stage and to talk about something that you may have not felt comfortable speaking about in a room full of strangers. We've been able to curate this space for poets so that when they're on stage, they do feel comfortable. They're stepping outside of their comfort zone. But then also for the people in the crowd, because I can perform something very personal for about 3 minutes. And then being in that crowd, you'll feel like, wow, like I was able to connect with this person.
Everyone, welcome to Was It Chance, the podcast about taking... Wait, I don't know how... I was like, I knew I said that wrong. I'm going to do it again. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. I'm Heather Vickery.
I'm Alan Seals. And Heather and I started off as two perfect strangers who met by chance and embraced opportunity. Listen in as we chat with other successful people about the risks they've taken to put themselves on a path to creative success. You got to step down that vocal progression there.
You did that really nicely. I was impressed. It's as if you've done this before.
Maybe what, 50 other times? I don't know what episode number this is. We'll get there. Listen in as the path they've taken on creative success. Well, who do we have today?
I have been so excited for this. I did not discover you, Rashan, but I found you on Instagram, and I was just enamored with everything you're doing. So I'm so excited for everybody to meet Rashan Brown. He is known as Rush the Mic as well. He is a spoken word poet and the founder of Poetry Me Please. And you guys don't even know this, but I have a deep love of poetry. So I was so excited.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I do. So Poetry Me Please is a spoken word poetry community platform and an event series that provides a stage for poets across the world to showcase their talent through creative verbal expression. And this is just a beautiful haven for poets all over the world. It is the largest poetry showcase in New York City, averaging 500 guests a show, which is crazy. Rashan has been featured. The list is so long, I'm just going to name a couple. NBC, Ebony, Revolt, and The Grio. You've been all over the place, Rashan. We are so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels good to be here. I'm excited for this.
So are you local to New York?
Yeah, I live in the Bronx.
Love it here. How long have you been in New York?
All my life, realistically. Yeah, all my life, realistically.
Realistically? If you really break it down to your whole life?
But on imagination, how long have you been here?
So the reason why I say realistically, I wasn't born in New York. I was born in Wisconsin. I lived there for about a few months. Then I moved to Jamaica for a year, and then I moved to the Bronx. So
all right.
For the better part of the later years, as opposed to the two, beginning years.
You don't remember those years, maybe.
Right, exactly.
You remember your cheesehead years? Those are some of the best
my neighbor,
years, probably.
Wisconsin. I don't always feel good about that.
Oh, well.
Wait, you don't like the cheese smell coming in across the lake?
It's not that. It's really their politics.
Oh, well, yeah. That's a different podcast.
Totally
altogether
different podcast.
Well then, okay. So New York, there are a bajillion and a half artists out here, and you've figured out your way to get ahead of the rest and do your thing and make this massively successful spoken word.
Easy for you to say.
Poke and spurred.
Don't let him on your stage, Rashan.
Poetry community platform. Wait, okay, hold on. I'm gonna back up a second. Poetry community platform. What do you mean by platform? Is it
so? Yeah, so it's a physical platform and a digital platform. So we have live showcases throughout the city, but we also have social platforms. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it. And just the digital space of being able to have a video that you can put anywhere, essentially.
So, okay, what's the concept then? Explain it to the listeners, right? Because if it's a platform, it sounds like you're showcasing video, or do people have to upload themselves performing, or can they just speak into voice memo? How does that all work?
Yeah, good question. It's funny. I've never been asked that specific question.
He's our tech guy.
So I mean, that's good though. So I walk you through the beginning stages. So we have a showcase, live showcase. We'll do it at a venue in the city, and we take about 10 to 12 poets per showcase. We give them 7 minutes on stage, and at the conclusion of the event, they receive video content, photography content, features on our social platforms, and they get welcomed into a community of poets. So to break that down for you, the first part of it is we record all of our showcases. So we'll do a two camera angle shot. We'll have a videographer in the front, like maybe like stage right, and then we'll have a videographer in the back. So poets will receive 2 videos per poem, meaning if you do 3 poems in that 7 minute, you'll receive 6 videos. You get a video shot of one angle, and then you get a second video of the combination of both angles, just in an edited format. And you get photography content. We being Poetry Me Please, we then take those videos and we upload it to our social platforms, in addition to also giving poets that same content. So we'll have it uploaded on our platforms, and, our numbers will be our numbers. But for individual poets, if they have a portfolio, if they have an EPK, if they have a system of tracking their own work, then they're able to upload those to their own platforms, post it how they want, across all of those social platforms.
Oh, that's cool.
That is so cool.
So you're creating the social assets for them to amplify the talents that they've already got. Taking the tech guesswork out of all of it, I suspect everything. A lot of people is a huge advantage, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. They get their videos, and it's like, do your thing.
I wish I had somebody to do that for me for all of my different things that I do. I don't do spoken word, but that would be very cool. Okay. So This show is all about learning about you and the intentional risks that you've taken to manifest this beautiful success. So can we go back a little bit and hear about you, Rashan, and like, how did you fall into poetry in the first place? Because you are also a spoken word poet, and I just want to know everything. So
correct, yeah. So we can go down the timeline. I started writing poetry in high school. Cliche, heartbreak.
Nice.
Had to tap into my emotions, and at the time it was just, it felt good. It was a way for me to express myself. And I might have been like sophomore, junior year of high school. I continued in college, not so much. I remember trying out for our school's poetry organization. Didn't make it. Ended up getting cut freshman year. Funny enough.
It's competitive enough to say you get cut from poetry.
Yeah, it was a thing. It was like, yeah, it was. I mean, yes, it was a real.
Okay,
it was a real deal. Yeah.
So go on.
Yeah, got cut. So I still found ways to perform, whether it's through other organizations or just on a personal level. If I had an event that I had an opportunity to perform, my event personally, then I would do it. And it wasn't until maybe about 3 years post undergraduate. So I became a teacher I taught for 4 years as a STEM educator. And maybe about 3 years after getting back to the city from school is when I had my first open mic in the city. And it's I don't think I attended a poetry show in between that time. I wasn't connected to the community at all. I don't think it was top of mind. But then a friend had approached me like, hey, I know you said you did poetry back in college. This would be a good event for you if you ever wanted to jump back in. And I was like, all right, cool. And I wrote a poem titled I Am Black, which is super. I hate using the word super, but it was very impactful for me because it was an opportunity for me to express myself through my identities. And I remember reciting that poem at the showcase, and I was like, oh, this is a good feeling. I forgot what this felt like. And one of the things that I remember from that event is poets had to pay to perform. So I think I paid about $20, $25, something like that. And then at the actual event, I remember seeing all of my friends there. And on a business standpoint, I was like, damn, I brought a good amount of people here and I had to pay. That doesn't make any sense. So moving forward,
people still had to pay, and they had to pay.
Yeah, and they had to pay. So I'm like, That doesn't make too much sense in my head. So I said, I want to be able to recreate this feeling that I had being on stage. So I wanted to give myself a platform through an event, and I was like, but I don't want to pay for it. So I was like, if I organized my own event, I couldn't charge myself. So I figured I'd just do it that way, and then I'd have some poets join me, and I knew that I wanted content for myself, so I figured it just would be nice to also give them content. And then Poetry Me Please was born.
Poetry Me Please.
Yeah.
All right.
I
So
love the name.
when I was in high school, showing your emotions wasn't
Back when you
cool.
had to walk 2 miles uphill and then downhill.
I'm
later.
still walking uphill both ways. Listen, that's how it works. It was not cool to show emotion, to be sensitive.
No.
Where I came from, North Carolina, it was all like sports, especially football. And I
Right.
got lucky enough to be accepted in the soccer crowd. But I can't see myself doing what you did at that age because, I mean, speak about the chance you took and what you were going through at that time to be like, of all the things you could do to get over the breakup, turning to poetry to me is so
Cool.
unique and special.
Yes.
Yeah. Like where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. At the time, I played sports. I was playing basketball, football in high school, and at the time, I used to watch a lot of battle rap. I used to
Okay.
watch a lot of battle rap, and I knew that I liked battle rap, of course, but I didn't like the rhyming, the pressure to rhyme, and to be consistent and stay on beat with a beat or like instrumental. Funny enough, that first poem was over instrumental, but I didn't like that pressure, so I was like, "There's a way to do this without like rhyming." And I remember there was a battle rapper goes by the name of Loaded Lux. He had a famous battle with another battle rapper named Calico. And Loaded Lux, although rhyming, his style was very poetic. Like I remember connecting that to like poetry and like looking at more poetry because of that. And I remember also looking at a poet named Joshua Bennett. He had performed for Obama at the White House. It was a big, huge, famous video that he had. He like dedicated the piece to his sister. But I remember like between those two poets and those two videos, like, oh, this is nice. Like this is dope. And I think I always loved to write, but I never recited it or, being able to perform it. So it just kind of connected. I don't have any of the specifics of anything more than that, but I know that those two videos, those two performers were very top of mind during that time.
I love
That's
that.
interesting. That's really interesting because I guess at that time for me too, I dove into musical theater, so it was my own form of
Oh, nice. There you go.
creativity and artistry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something really just so magical about spoken word in general. I love poetry. Writing poetry is something that I did at that age in high school as well.
Nice.
Now my kids are doing it a little, and I always get so excited when it's the poetry section in their English classes.
Yeah.
But there's something really special about spoken word, which is different. And actually maybe for listeners who don't really understand, because you don't just get up and read your poem. That's not what's happening.
No.
So can you maybe tell from your perspective for the listeners what the experience is like?
Yeah. Even going down to being able to define the differences, a lot of people will say like poetry and then they'll say open mic. So there's levels of like educating yourself and educating others. So and to me, when I think about poetry, I think of being able, you can write it, sometimes you can also perform it. It is just a style of a collective of words that you're putting together and that has a unique style, like the poetic style. And that can be the way that it comes off as you're saying it. It's not an essay. It's not an excerpt. It's not a blurb. It's a bit of a style of a melody you may, if you may. And then for spoken word is the passion that comes behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're on stage and, the way you deliver a word, you're not just saying poetry. You might say poetry. The tones, the volume level, your body language on stage. And to me, that's all included of, the ambition and the passion that goes behind it. So spoken word is that passion piece to the poetry. And then you get into like an open mic, which is an opportunity for anybody to just kind of come up and sign up. And then you'll have showcases where poets are being promoted, and they have their own flyers, and what to look, you know who to look forward to. And then you have slam competitions, which also vary in style because that's competing for a prize. So you'll have a time limit. You'll have a rubric and guidelines where slam poets, they often make a joke that like slam poets sound the same because, they're kind of performing to a rubric, so this, sort of kind of
That
stuff.
makes sense.
It kind of goes through different levels. Yeah.
How many different styles of poetry are there? Because like I just don't know the space, right?
Unlimited.
Because
I was going to say, that's not definable, is it?
Well,
Yeah,
well, I mean,
don't think so.
I guess like in music, you can say there's pop, there's country, there's rap, there's hip hop, there's alternative. Like you can kind of define music by a little bit of genre. Indie, everything changes, right? And stuff gets modified over time. But is there something like like you said, you don't like rhyming, you don't like keeping the rhythm. Is it freestyle? Is it like I'm the AB guy, I'm the ABB guy? Like
Yeah.
Are there categories like that?
I mean, there honestly are. It's undefinable. It's limitless. It's really how you feel when you get on stage. I would think there's more of just like styles and themes, whereas poetry, it's for you mentioned like alternative or hip hop, rap, R&B. I think for poetry, it's more on the themes. So you can be like a love poet because all your poetry deals and kind of like has like a love piece to it. You can be a poet that is for identities and who you are individually, in society. So I don't know if I put a cap on it. I think the beauty of poetry is that you can literally make it into what you want, and everybody has their own personal style when they get up on stage and perform it. But then there's also a style when you're reading it and writing it. So it kind of goes both ways.
So here's my question. You did this Friends showcase. It reignited a passion. You were like, oh, I like this. But the time you were teaching, you thought, let me start my own thing. I'm not going to charge the performers. That makes sense. I mean, they're probably like, what I should be getting paid. I'm on stage. And they are, right? With your videos and all that. That's payment.
Yeah.
What happens that you decide, I'm not going to teach anymore? Like, this is going to be my business. I mean, you've got incredible partnerships with Harlem's Fashion Row, New York Independent Schools, like big companies like Accenture, like lots of stuff. So how do we go from one to the other?
Yes, interesting. And I guess I'll give you more background because your question might change a little bit. So I taught for 4 years, STEM education in the Bronx, 7 through 12, mainly eighth graders, and I transitioned to product management. So I'm currently still working full time. So I'm a product manager for ESPN currently.
Okay.
While also being the founder of Poetry Me Please. So it was never like one or the other. It was just more of a transitional stage. And then I was able to just find ways to make time for poetry. So through a lot of the collaborations and partnerships that we've had, the heavy part has just been the marketing piece, investing in myself, which I'm sure we'll get into. But it's, taking those risks of being able to say, I'm going to set aside this amount of money, this amount of time, this amount of effort, also these resources, continues to promote myself, on my platforms. And then when an opportunity comes around where a company would want to organize a poetry show or they want to have a spoken word poet, I myself can jump in and say, okay, I can organize this for you. I can be the performer, or I can outsource, and jump in our database and give other poets that opportunity. So a lot of it has been being able to show people like, hey, this is how I'm going to define poetry. And in the hopes of you will like it and then want to dig more into it. So that's what I've seen since that journey has started.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. And now we're back.
Is this something you take into corporations? Like, do you do any sort of corporate work around this, or is it just personal passion?
Both. And again, the way that I break it up is Poetry Me Please is its own entity of
Yeah.
the showcases and the production that we put on. But Rush the Mic is also a spoken word poet, a performer, someone who will, has his own journey. And like I'm talking in third person here, but like I have my own journey.
I love that.
Um,
It's a
and
persona, right? Yeah.
yeah, literally, it is, and
It's
it's
character.
it is, and I think that's the best part of spoken word is that I can jump into character when I'm on stage, and I can, all these personalities but all authentic and real. So in the corporation space of, what does Poetry Me Please look like partnering with big corporate companies, small businesses, the whole nine. There's so many ways to go about it.
So at ESPN, this is a little startup. I think it's going to go places though. You should stick with it. So ESPN, obviously, do you have to keep it all separate there, or are you like, hey, coworkers, look, I got the fix for you here. Listen, they're burnt out, they're upset, they're unhappy. Like, listen, I got the solution for you. Look, it's called poetry. And like, are you trying to get people into your world and cross ecosystems, or do you keep it separate like that?
I typically keep it separate, and although I think I'm opening up more about the stuff that I do because everything is public facing, but I just think naturally with work, I would the normal mindset is for me to just keep it separate. But I haven't, I've spoken to a lot of the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis know and what I do. There's been opportunities for them to come out, so it's kind of like more of a natural flow. But I think what I'm more focused and more concerned on is the community in which I'm serving. And, if I come across a poet within the ESPN ecosystem, then of course, and I'm trying to get them to come out, people who like poetry and honestly, people who don't or, aren't as exposed to poetry. So it's more of a natural flow.
How do you know, how do you know who is a secret poet, right? Like, I feel like this underground
or
thing,
a fan.
right?
Yeah.
If it comes, sometimes it doesn't come up, but sometimes it does. It's like, it'll be very random too. Like, oh, anybody know like things to do in the city? And they're like, oh, any like showcases or like, musical events. And I'm like, oh, the PMP exists. And then, we kind of get into that conversation. So
That's what
it
I was
happens every now and again.
thinking. Yeah, it's just about that live experience, and it's
Correct.
such a different. Well, I want to next time we're in. I come in a couple times a year and hang out with Alan in New York, and we see a bunch of shows, and we
Yeah,
should maybe
please
try
do.
to
Let me
coordinate
know.
around one of
Yeah.
your showcases because I think we would love that. You
Yeah, I would love to
mentioned
have you.
the community, and that shows up a lot when I was researching for the interview and all of that. Can you talk about what that means and who and how you're supporting the community?
Yeah. So we have, I always say we, PMP, so many different communities. So when we say community, we're talking about the poetry community, people who like poetry, people that are looking for poets, people that want to be in that live space for poetry, but then also within the identity space of Black and Brown, African Americans within that space, especially for Black people nowadays, being able to find a vulnerable space to be authentic, to jump on stage and to talk about something that you may have not felt comfortable speaking about in a room full of strangers. We've been able to curate this space for poets so that when they're on stage, they do feel comfortable. They're stepping outside of their comfort zone. But then also for the people in the crowd, because I can perform something very personal for about 3 minutes. And then being in that crowd, you'll feel like, wow, like I was able to connect with this person. I may not have been able to relate exactly to what I was going through, but something will resonate with you. And, being in that space, you have to take, when you go home, you're going to constantly think about what you just experienced, the people that you talk to after, whether it's a day after or weeks after. So there's been a lot of times during our performances where people are like, yo, this was such a safe haven for me. I felt super comfortable being in this space and being able to relate with people that look like me, that sound like me, but most importantly, experience the world in the same fashion that I do. So those are a lot of the points when we say community, and even just the New York community, right? Five boroughs, being in the Bronx, but then also jumping into the inner city, into the inner city. So what does it mean to be from New York? When you're at a PMP showcase, you're like, okay, This is very New York. It has like a New York a theme to it. So that's also another community.
That's spectacular. And
Yeah, what's the
again,
Go
because
ahead, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Alan, I'm going to let you. This is my last question for a minute. I'm going to let you talk. But within,
Did you just pull a Kanye on me?
yeah, nice. Thanks so much.
I'm gonna let you finish.
I'm clearly T Swift. No, um, no, but there is something. I mean, I can always recall about the experience of being a writer, and you talked about that earlier, from a heartbreak, like it was away, and then the experience of being a performer, and then the experience of having safe place, safe space, safe people to have those conversations with, or to show up and share your work and be so vulnerable. And it's so cool that you have created this really beautiful niche community, but it isn't just for the performers. It's amazing for the performers. And I think the gift of giving them social media videos and photos is like, to me, I just think that's incredible. But for an audience, it could really change people's full understanding of somebody else's lived experience.
Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It puts them in it, there's been, I mean, I can give you an example of just I think the most vulnerable pieces are personal pieces about family members, typically. And somebody will get on stage and like, this is the dedicated piece to someone that has passed in my life,
Mm.
whether it be a parent, sibling, close family relative. And after that performance, the room is often quiet sometimes. It's you're coming in and unintentionally, but you're coming into a showcase on a Friday, Saturday night. And after that performer goes, it's kind of like, wow, it puts you in a space where now you're thinking about somebody that you may have lost, and it's a very touching, like reflective moment. Like I've had those moments. I kind of see when it happens, and it feels good because you know that you're not alone. And whether or not sometimes you don't want to think about things like that, but then sometimes you do get an
Yeah.
opportunity where you're not listening to 10 poets talk about lost ones, but you do get an opportunity to be emotional in that space because at the end of the night, people aren't typically as emotional as they would like to be all the time. You're not always crying, especially for like
Right.
men, from what I've seen, black men especially. When you're in the room, I'm looking at one of my friends that I know, and he's like, yo, like that was touching. And I'm like, I haven't heard you say that in years.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Do you get that a lot though? I guess. Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like you probably do. It's the same thing that I went towards musical theater, but just the performance space, the art, right? The art, the lived experience of going through something with somebody else in real time, whether or not it's a story or made up or not, right? But knowing, I think poetry probably tends to be more real and more lived experience. I think it makes it
Yeah.
a little bit like extra special. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the pieces, I mean, especially me, but generally speaking, when poets are on stage, it's like they're telling you about something that happened to them, something that they went through, and you're hearing it from their voice, from their lens. And sometimes you get a real connection of like, wow, like I know exactly what you're talking about. So typically with poetry, we see that people aren't just acting or just writing about things that they haven't been through, although that's fine as well. But, to your point, I think more on the side of lived experiences.
And there's something really profound about performing it as spoken word. So, a point of reference, my daughter in the 6th grade, they do these poetry. She's in 8th grade now. So, you
Nice.
know what that's like. They all have to, when the whole school does poetry at the same time, and they write poems and then they recite them and they have a little competition. Well, she won for 6th
Nice.
grade a poem that she wrote kind of off the cuff about how the press and social media make her hate herself.
Mm. Oh,
And
wow.
it was, she chose not to perform it for the whole school because it was just too much.
Yeah.
She felt it really deeply. And she was like, nope, I'm not going to compete. The runner-up can compete. And I think the runner-up actually won. So pretty cool that the 6th grader won from the whole school. But
Nice.
it's difficult to do that and stay in that space of that high intensity emotion.
Yeah. No, that's as you're speaking, I'm like, I have a poem myself that I've titled From the Hood Part 3. It's about growing up in my neighborhood, but then also losing a friend to gun violence.
Oh,
And
wow.
I performed that piece. That was one of my first pieces that I performed, like when I first started doing poetry, and I shared it with people. And I would only share clips of it, but I'd only perform that poem maybe 3 times since I wrote it because it doesn't feel right performing it
Yeah.
in front of people. It
It's
honestly just
personal.
doesn't. It's a and I realize like I'm talking to myself in that piece, which as I am with multiple pieces, but for that one specifically, it's like this is actually not for anybody else but me. But I used it as a way to show people what I am capable of and also what I'm doing. But that's more of a personal piece for sure.
So you went to, I guess when you were in high school, you started doing the poetry, and then you went to this thing later on, a couple years later, and had to pay for it. Then you're like, I'm going to do it myself. So chance number one, I guess, was trying poetry. Then you just embraced this opportunity to come back and go to this other thing, and then decided to do it yourself. At
Right.
what
Lots of
point,
embracing chance for you.
right. And at what point then are you saying, I'm going to do this as a platform? I'm going to provide the tech resources. I'm going to take it to the next level. When and why did that happen?
Um, I used to host parties, used to throw parties in the city. And so the organization piece of the event wasn't difficult. I think that was probably the easiest part. I just knew I just needed a bar, and like a stage and some lights. And I can get people in a room, I sell tickets for X amount, I'll try to hit the capacity, bar guarantee, so that piece kind of made sense to me. The tech piece came in because I when I did poetry, that first showcase I did, I was looking for more poetry in the city, and it was difficult finding like quality content. I'm not talking about a selfie video or maybe a video of just like a person performing.
Yeah.
I was looking for like, actual content, and it was very difficult to find it. So I was like, damn, it feels like there's a lot of poets, like a lot of people write, a lot of performers are out here. I know it's possible. But if you're not jumping into a physical space, then you don't really get to see poetry a lot, especially on social media in my community. So I said, I know that I want a video of my performance and I want it to be high quality. I want to be able to post it and I want to feel good about it. I want to be able to chop it up into pieces. I want to be able to break it up and like really try to hone in on what promoting myself looks like. And I said, I also want to do this for poets because it's not out there. So like
Mm-mm.
finding the gap and then figuring out how to fill it, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna do a 2 angle shot. I'm gonna kind of make it how I did it for my first 2 videos. So the piece that I also forgot to mention is after I did the showcase in the city, that open mic, um Poetry Me Please, the first showcase was scheduled for March 2020. If you
Mm.
remember what happened in
Oh,
March
I sure
2020.
do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
Oops.
So we had to postpone until June 2021. But in between that time, I think towards the later year, I wrote and performed 2 poems. I remember booking out a clear space. I booked a videographer, I booked a photographer, and it cost me about like $2,500. So this was the chance piece. And I said, I'm going to perform and record these in a studio, and I'm going to put this on my social media
Wow.
because I want people to be excited for when Poetry Please comes back. Like, hey, this is what poetry looks like. It can be cool. Or so I thought it was cool.
It
And I
is
was
cool.
like, this is what I want poets. This is how I wanted to look for poets. So when the show came up, I was like, I want it to be exactly how I did it for myself. I think a poet can really be good at utilizing that content. So that was the connection that was made with the tech aspect. And obviously with the social media in itself being able to just viral content, putting stuff out there and making sure that you're documenting your progress from step one all the way until you finish.
Hmm. Do you coach at all? Are there people that have come to you for sort of mentorship or advising?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like pouring back into my community is always at the top of mind. So whether it's poetry, transition education into tech, I have a bunch of mentees that I work with, young students. So it's all in the lane of, being able to give back.
That's so cool.
That's so neat because you're making an online collection for these people. an online portfolio, which, because it's the internet, it'll live on forever.
Yeah.
Well, and
your
content
story
converts, right? Content
Yeah,
makes money.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, going back and forth. Like, we did our first time we shot at the park, and we are like talking through how we want to shoot it. And he's like, the light is like, I've never dealt with sunlight because we always do it at in a venue. So we're kind of going back and forth, and he's like showing me how he's going through the editing process, and I was like, yeah, like it's kind of above my head because I'm not an editor, but I'm looking at the work he's doing, and I'm like, this is like golden. Like now, I hope you're able to take these new skills and like apply them to your everyday work, because you're also doing other videos. So like there's those key moments where you learn throughout the process. And I just tried to like highlight that as a way to, also say like, it's not just the rate, trust me that, we can make this possible. And, we've been doing a good job about it.
So this is all fine and dandy, success after success, right? So there's no failure in here whatsoever.
No, tons of failure.
All right. So what is your relationship with failure?
Tons of failure. Failure looks very different depending on who you ask. Asking myself, throw up the cliche perfectionist, very high critical of myself and the work that I do and put out. I would say more so in the earlier years, you sell a lot of tickets for some showcases, and in some cases you don't. Some showcases you're able to pay everybody, and other showcases you have to come out of pocket. So a lot of it for me is, on the monetary value of like, are we meeting? I have to sell X amount of tickets in order to break even. Sometimes that happens, again, sometimes it doesn't. But even furthermore, the production of the event. Doors open at 6, show starts at 7, we're out by 10. That's crucial and that's important. But sometimes you'll have a performer that runs over. You'll have the crowd. We allow our crowd to jump into the performances. So if I start talking, somebody in the crowd may say, "Oh, run it back. Start from the top. I want to hear it again." And a poet will run it back. And like, it's a very live, animated, passionate, showcase. And we've had some showcases where we're over time. Now we're going past our contract. We've had poets drop out last minute. And, there are things that I can do, having poets on standby, making sure that poets are, ending on time, making sure that my DJ has a poet song, making sure that the host knows, or he has the introduction for these poets. So there's like various levels of what, failure can look like, even finding the right venues.
All right, one more quick break. Hang on a second. All right, here's the rest of the episode.
Especially in New York City, trying to find a venue that can hold up to 500 people is not an easy task. A lot of the times, contracts will fall through, schedules will be pushed back. We went from bi-monthly to monthly, having to extend the showcase. So it's, we might have to skip a month, or there's times where, there's no showcases or videos are late. So like, so failure looks very, there's varying levels of failure, but so for the most part, we have been successful because we've been progressing. And that's what's most important.
I didn't realize that it was at that capacity. Like you said, like housing 500 people. I mean, that's a Broadway house. That's legitimately the size you need for Broadway theater. This poetry, I think like coffee house, 10, 20, maybe 30 people, you know what I mean?
Small cafe.
Yeah, small little cafe. But no, this
little
is straight cafe. On. This is a performance. And if you're encouraging over 500 people to interact and ask them to walk it back and say things again, whatever they're doing, that's a production, man. That's a big deal.
It is. And finding places, not only 500. So, I say the perfect place is a restaurant, because we're a full table service dinner event. So not only like finding, because we can get a theater, we've done things in a theater, but we have like full table service. So ideally our best venue would house up to 500 with 300 seats.
Wow.
So maybe 350, four, closer to 4, but like having seats, whereas people can stand, but for the most part, the crowd is sitting down, ordering drinks and food,
which is great for the venue.
Exactly. So it works. It works if it works. If you find the right space. Other times it gets a little tricky. Yeah.
When things don't go the way you hope they will, failure, if we want to call it that, are you just kind of a bounce back, like be a duck kind of guy? Like, okay, that didn't work. So all comes out in the wash. Like, how do you handle when things don't go the way you want them to?
Yeah, I think that I've done a great job, and I've worked with, my financial advisor and, people that are in my corner where the big failures I know about ahead of time. Like I know if I'm not going to be a go a week out, a few days out. So I'm like mentally prepping and preparing for it. I think that the last minute failures are leaving room for error and especially
Yeah.
human error,
Yeah.
coming to terms with that things may not always go well. And I think that if I'm just high critical about the process and the production, that I limit that level of failure and, the risk amount, because obviously again, failure will occur. But if I think that if I've done my best ability up until the point of the showcase or, some form of production, then I'm limiting how bad something can be. So a lot of it is just, it is a bounce back. It's understanding the end goal, and the end goal is ever changing. But I haven't experienced anything where I'm like, wow, like this was, fingers crossed, because, it's a little superstitious.
We don't want that for you. We're not manifesting that. We want it to go great.
Right. If something is like judgmental, I'm like, damn, like what do I do now? But no, I have a good support system. I have a great team. I have a lot of people in my corner. So I just have like positive thoughts about the things that I do. But just having an open mind that something can go wrong,
Yeah.
and so that when it does go wrong, I'm like, okay, this is how I fix it.
Oh, I do have an interesting question. So you obviously sell tickets, you promote like you would promote any other performance, but how do you reach the audience, the poetry community, the spoken word community, and invite them into this space? And I don't know if anybody's listening who wants to participate or knows somebody else who might want to, like how do you raise those poets up?
Yeah, a few different ways. We have an open sign up sheet on our website, on all our social platforms. It's a Google form where anyone can literally sign up, and we do a random selection. So funny now because we have over 1,000 poets, but we take about 10 to 12. So imagine a randomizer from 1 to 1,000. We'll pull a few numbers and then we'll match the numbers up to the name, and then we'll reach out to you and say like, hey, your number has been chosen. If you are free, please, here's your opportunity. You have 7 minutes, you figure it out. We don't do like an audition system. We keep it, free flow. We've been blessed, of course, because people are coming on and really enjoying what they're putting on. But the other beautiful part of that is that poetry is really subjective. Anyone could have a poem that resonates with someone. And then the other places are through promotion, especially on social media. If I post a video, I have my own core set of an audience, and, you can share that X amount of times. But through other people, it's like when a poet posts their work, you got Poetry Please there. People are like, oh, like this was great. How can I support you? And if they come back to Poetry Please, then they have, they're bringing their community, they bring their people. We give poets assets to promote. So for Poetry Please, everyone is a feature, right? So if we have 10 poets, all 10 poets are features. So they're having their own flyers to promote. They have their name places. We're giving them the opportunity where it's not only the platform, but we're also teaching poets how to promote themselves. Like this is what you can put out. We're using Instagram as our core base, but you can post a flyer, have comments, tag Poetry Please, let them know what to expect, show them our platform, and it's just been a lot of success with going about it that way. But then also for me as a founder, being authentic, where I am Rashan Brown, but I'm also Rush the Mic. So PMP is right behind me in every step of the way.
That's so cool.
That's so neat. The only poetry I write is in my out of office messages.
It's actually pretty great. It's actually pretty great.
Nice. I might have to use that one day.
You should totally use that. Yeah.
Oh, when I leave, it's always something different. So I work in where I'm going if it's on vacation or something.
Nice.
So, I'm like, I always start with roses or red, violets or blue, because that's one of the most cliche things you can. So I was like, because I just took a trip to Alaska. So it was like roses, red, violets or blue. I'm on a trip to Alaska. How about you? And then I was going down Like, if you need this, contact this person. If you need this, contact that
Nice.
person. And it was all in rhyme scheme, and I'm a big nerd, and that's how I roll. But anyway.
I asked him if he had AI write it. He was like, I can write a basic poem, Heather.
Right.
So when how can we see the upcoming shows? How can we connect with you? How's all the ways? All the ways. Let me count them. 1, 2.
All of our social platforms, Poetry Me Please. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, as well as our website, poetrymeplease.com. As long as you subscribe, I would say the best way is to subscribe to our website. As soon as you pop it open, you'll see it. If not, scroll to the bottom, you'll see a subscription, get on our newsletter. In addition, so you'll receive all of our information, but then also follow us because we post pretty frequently. So those are all the places.
Are all of the showcases in New York, or do you ever do any outside of the city?
Yeah, so we've done majority of our showcases in New York. We have our 23rd coming up in October 8th. But we've also been out to London. We had a showcase in London. And we also partnered with the organization AfroFuture out in Ghana. So we've been to
That's so cool.
London, Ghana. We've been to Syracuse University. We had a college showcase, still in New York, but outside of the city. And yeah, we'll have, for the most part, New York, but we also will tap out
So
to.
come to Chicago. We always get left out.
Yeah, well, Chicago has a good poetry. I would say I feel like I've seen some good stuff. It's funny. We always go back and forth about we can do showcases pretty much anywhere, right? Especially if there's a good crowd of like poetry fans and poetry fanatics. But we are concerned with really establishing our base, being in New York, cultivating a Poetry Me Please experience, so that when we are at a place where we can pick up Poetry Me Please and drop it in another city, as opposed to trying to recreate something similar to what we do to New York. I want to be able to pick it up and drop it in another city.
That makes sense. My last question is, if somebody wants to work with or hire Rush the Mic specifically, is there a different place they should look for you, or should they find you also through Poetry Me Please?
They should find me through Poetry Me Please, but also my personal platforms on Instagram _Russian, Rashan at poetrymeplease.com, or simply send us an email at poetrymeplease, and they'll have an opportunity to.
Awesome. Rashan, this was
check
so
show
fun.
notes. We'll throw it all in there.
We'll
Nice.
put it all in there. I love what you're doing, and I am super excited. Oh, you're going to be at the Apollo, right? You have a showcase at the Apollo? When is that?
Almost missed that. The Apollo Showcase will be on November 25th, 2023. This will be the largest poetry showcase since Def Poetry Jam took to Broadway in 2008. So we will be making history on November 25th.
Wow.
Very cool.
That's so cool. All right, awesome. Well, I can't wait to, Alan and I are going to come see a showcase, and wish you so much luck. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Roses are red, violets are blue. We just finished an episode. How about you?
It was a fun episode. Yeah, you did not know. I have a deep love of poetry. There are several books of angsty poetry on my bookshelf back from my high school and college.
I didn't know that.
days.
Wait, the books that you wrote?
Oh, no. Actually, yes. Somewhere in my basement, I did have a few poems published in like Poets Across America. I don't know. They used to do these anthologies, which was just a money grab, right? You would pay and they would feature it. My parents thought that was cool. No, not of mine, but of poets that I love and admire. But spoken word is like, it's a whole new thing, a whole different thing, and it is so cool.
I know. I need to start like diving into this because it's a whole realm that I don't know about. I haven't been experienced enough in this area, and my peers, as you know very well, are in the musical theater, singing, tap dancey, in your face kind of performing.
Spoken word is in your face.
Oh, this is what I see is not this.
Yeah.
I need to go out and see this. I've got to go see his shows. These are awesome.
Yeah. I think the next time I'm in, I'll plan it around one of these showcases because we're gonna have a good time. You're gonna love it. I mean, it's very passionate, and Rashan is such a chill, low key dude. Like, he's very level, but his cool factor is really high.
Like, cool factor. All right. Well, I didn't know we still use that word, but I guess we do.
Well, I'm an 80s baby.
All right. Cool factor minus. All right. Yeah, my cool factor has been in the tubes since I became a dad. Okay. Well, I am so excited. Yeah, making history. I didn't realize these things were so big. Like I said, the 500 seat kind of things. You know what I mean? And I think it's just so cool that he's putting this together and helping like bring a community to, or bring community and representation to his community too, who like he was saying, you don't find that a lot with young black men especially. And I think it's just so cool that he's being able to lead by example in this way.
And to create space to really feel your emotions and to share them and have joy around it, even if they're difficult emotions, instead of shame and like, keep it all down. So yeah, it's really, really cool. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We would love to hear what you think of this episode or any of our other episodes, or how you're out choosing, taking intentional risk, doing all that cool stuff. Alan, how can folks find us?
By writing us a poem. And
You can write us a poem.
Writing us a poem about your experiences with Was It Chance, and send it to us at Was It Chance Podcast. No, yeah, Was It Chance Podcast at gmail.com. I always get that wrong. Was It Chance on Instagram and Threads, and Was It Chance Podcast at gmail.com.
We want to hear from you. We really do. Oh, and we would be so delighted if you would go onto your favorite listening platform and rate and review the show. Make sure you're following, subscribing, whatever the word is on your favorite platform, because it means a lot to us, and we're so glad to have you listening every week. Y'all, you've been listening to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. I'm Heather Vickery.
And I'm Alan Seals.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.